Welcome into Sports Memo's betting podcast for Wednesday, March 6th. We're talking soccer. We're talking MLS with Nick Borrman. Nick, welcome to the pod. How are you?
I'm doing well, Drew. How are you today?
I'm doing good, man. And, it was just opening weekend of the MLS, the Major League Soccer season this past weekend. Saw a couple games on. There was some nationally televised games. I was thinking about you, some of your plays. I think you ended up going, 2-2, hitting your free play. Is that right?
Yes, correct. 2-2 on the client plays, won the free play. I actually went through what we kind of previewed last week. We went through every game on the board and was able to. We had 5-3 on the games that we previewed. So had some good analysis on the games. Had one bad beat on Sunday night. Kansas City lost literally in the last 30 seconds of stoppage time. They were a good pick in that game, so that was unfortunate. But still, 2-2. We'll try to get on the winning side of it this week.
And a couple things noticing here. Again, we talked about the totals last week, pretty much, threes across the board. There's a couple that are 2.75, but we're seeing totals of 3. How much longer do you think this will last before, the odds makers have some opinions and we start seeing 2.5s or maybe 3.5s?
In the MLS, it's traditionally a little bit of a higher scoring league. So 3 you don't see a lot of games, as you kind of mentioned. You only see 2 this week that are under 3. So what we'll start to see is some 3.25s, 3.5s. But I think we're probably a good month away. I think they're kind of being a little bit more conservative with the totals based on a lot of these games being early in the season and with weather impacting, pretty much anybody in the northern part of the country. Summertime, I think we're going to see a lot of 3.25s, 3.5s. But 3 really is the baseline in the MLS. And it's 8 out of 11 games this week is listed at 3. So you can see how they love that total.
Yeah, for sure. And guys, this is the every game on the board. So we're going to hit all the MLS games for this weekend. And check out sportsmemo.com. Nick has a 1-month special of MLS. For 30 days, you will get all of his MLS picks for just $99. That's from the day you buy. You'll get the next 30 days discounted to just $99 on his homepage at sportsmemo.com. Let's go through these games for the next 20 minutes or so. Nick, Orlando at Chicago, top of the card here. Chicago minus 0.75 home favorites, total of 3.
Yeah, so we discussed last week. I think Chicago is going to be quite a bit improved this year. They lost last week 1-2 against the Galaxy, but they looked really good. They actually outplayed LA in that game, and of course, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, scored the winner for Los Angeles in the game. But I think the Fire looked good. I think they're going to respond here in their home opener. They made some good moves over the offseason to really strengthen their defense, which was their weakness last year. And they held the Galaxy to 5 shots on goal in that first game, which the Galaxy averaged 6.5 last year. So shot and a half doesn't sound like a lot, but in soccer it is a lot to keep somebody that much lower than their average. So they did a good job. Orlando, they played very well against New York City. I have New York City as a team kind of on the decline this year after losing 2 of their biggest offensive weapons. David Villa is one of them. The guys just scored goals so much this year. So they didn't play well. I expected that to be the case. We were on Orlando last weekend at plus quarter of a goal, so that worked out well. But I don't see much improvement for Orlando this year. I think that situation just happened to kind of work in their favor last week. I still see them struggling this year on defense, so it's hard to get behind that team. But I think Chicago is going to return home here for their home opener and come out with a win. So I like Chicago in this game, Drew. And instead of taking them on the 3-quarter goal line, you can get them on the money line at around minus 130 right now is how I'd play it.
And, we're seeing Chicago, and then the next game is at New England, Nick. You bring up the weather. I believe it's cold up there in the Northeast. Is that right?
It's very cold. Yeah, it's not even it's like 30 degrees today is the high, so it definitely affects the play, just like any other sport does. So, yeah, it's definitely a factor in these games right now.
And when you say affects the play, would you say it more favors the defense in the sport of soccer?
Yeah, it slows the game down. The ball's harder. It doesn't roll out as much. You're not getting as much, flight in the ball as you're kicking it. So it's definitely a slower paced defensive game generally right now. And that's, again, why I think you're seeing the totals a little bit lower, a little more conservative to start the year off.
And if there's soccer, hardcore soccer bettors out there, they'd obviously know the answer to this question. I'm not. I'm trying to learn it. I was actually interested in betting it this weekend, didn't touch it, but think I'm going to get into it in the next couple weeks because it's a fun sport. I got into it living in Costa Rica. That's what they're all about. But is all the turf the same as far as it can't be, right? The outdoors are sometimes grass. I know Atlanta isn't grass, right?
Yeah, correct. Same as the NFL. You got different surfaces and of course different conditions of the surfaces, especially right now this time of year. So yeah, you have to kind of play all that into the factor here. And some places are going to play faster, some are going to play slower, some are going to play terrible because it's wet and or beat up from other events that are going on. So you got to look at all that for sure.
And which ones play the fastest as far as looking to bet overs? Field turf?
Yes, for sure. Yep. Atlanta's got the new stadium there that plays very, very fast. But yeah, anything on turf is going to play a little bit quicker.
All right, next game up, we got Columbus at New England. This is a pick'em, total at 2.75.
Yeah, so Columbus, they played to a 1-1 draw against the Red Bulls last week. That game was weird. It saw some huge line movement. I mean, Columbus opened at minus a quarter of a goal and then ended at -1, which is a big move in soccer. Not really sure what caused that move. Regardless, it was the wrong way. I actually previewed the Red Bulls at plus a quarter of a goal as one of our plays last week. So I don't know what caused that move, but they didn't really look that great in that game. They just couldn't really get many shots on goal. And that was their same problem they had all last year was offensive output. They were one of the lowest scoring teams to make the playoffs last year and didn't look any better last week. New England, they also played to a 1-1 draw this past week at Dallas. But that was a good result for them because New England struggled last year and Dallas was favored to win that first game. So New England, they had defensive troubles last year, but they made some offensive moves this offseason. So they didn't really address their defensive issues. They kind of went out to, I guess, seek more goals to cover up the fact that they have a bad defense. But that match, New England and Dallas, really didn't play out that way, as there was only the 3 shots total on goal. So I don't know really. I don't have a huge read on New England yet. I'm trying to figure them out. However, this game, I think just the fact that it's going to be in New England, we talked about the cold weather, and then both teams really in the first week really just look slow. We're not getting their shots. I think I would look at this game as going on the under. Even though it's 2.75 right now, I think under is the play on this one, Drew.
And we got LA Galaxy at Dallas. Dallas minus a half a goal at home, total of 3 in this one.
Yeah, so both playoff contenders, but neither one of them really looked good last week. The Galaxy, as we already mentioned, snuck out a 2-1 win against Chicago. Was Zlatan scoring in the 80th minute, but they really were not the better team in that game. I thought Chicago did a good job of controlling the midfield and limiting Galaxy's chances to score. Defensively, they did hold Chicago to just 1 goal, but they still looked really vulnerable in that game. They conceded 64 goals last year, which was good for 3rd worst in the conference. But they also scored 66, which was the second most. So usually you see a lot of action from their games. Dallas, they looked very unimpressive as they were held to that 1-1 draw against New England that we just talked about. They scored the opening goal in the game at the 13-minute mark, and that was it. They're very young, they're inexperienced, and I don't know if they're going to have the best game plan here to try to stop the Galaxy's attack. Dallas did win both meetings last year by the score of 3-2 in actually both games. The question mark is always going to be, though, when you're playing with the Galaxy is what's Zlatan going to do? So I think we're going to see him score probably at least another goal, maybe 2 in this game, because he's an animal in this league and hard to stop. But I think we're going to see Dallas kind of gel a little better offensively, just because Galaxy they don't really have a great defense. So I think over in this game is the way to play it. I think we'll see multiple chances on both sides in this one.
And we got a total of 3 in the Montreal at Houston game. Houston laying a half a goal at home.
Yeah, I like Montreal catching the half goal here. Montreal, as expected last week, they went in, beat San Jose, who was bottom of the league last year. So they didn't really look that great, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that the fact that they had to travel from Montreal to San Jose all the way across the country in that first game, which is tough to do. But the second half of last year, they really came on strong. They were 10 wins, 4 draws, 5 losses in their last 19 games. And then over the offseason, they added some good attackers to support Ignacio Piatti, who's really strong up front. So I think they're going to be an improved team this year. Houston, they're looking to rebound after what was a really terrible year for them last year. They ended up salvaging the year. They won the U.S. Open Cup, so at least they were able to do that. But last week they earned a 1-1 draw against Real Salt Lake, but they were really lucky to do so. Salt Lake was much better in that game. They doubled up on Houston in shot attempts. So it doesn't look like a lot has changed for Houston so far. Of course, it's one game. It's a lot, you can't read into it too much. But I like Montreal catching the half a goal here. I think they're going to be an improved side this year.
And we got Vancouver at Real Salt Lake. Real Salt Lake laying minus 0.75, total of 3. Nick, any quick thoughts here? I know you got a free play up at sportsmemo.com. I would recommend everybody go read it. But any just quick thoughts here on Vancouver, Real Salt Lake?
Yeah, I think Salt Lake, Vancouver, they are going to struggle this year. They have a brand new team, 15 new players on the team. Minnesota was real bad last year, and they lost to Minnesota 2-3 in the first game. I think Vancouver is going to be down near the bottom this year. And Salt Lake, they were one of the best teams in the league last year. They came on really strong at the end of the year. And I think they're going to have a pretty easy time in this game. So, yeah, I'll have a full write-up and analysis up on my page. You can check that out there. But I like Salt Lake in this game.
And Nick's also got a free play on the Chelsea game tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern in the Europa League. He's got a free play up there. I won't tell you who he's betting because once you go read it, it's a good analysis play here. Lot on it, so check it out at sportsmemo.com, Nick's homepage there. Also follow Nick on Twitter at Borman00, and remember his $99 special. That's soccer plays for the next 30 days, discounted to just $99, the MLS 1 month special at sportsmemo.com. We got Minnesota at San Jose up next. San Jose small home favorites here, 0.25 at home, total of 3, Nick.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised to see this line right now, San Jose as a small favorite. I think they're going to be just as bad as they were last year. They were the worst team with just 4 wins in 34 matches last year, and the next closest team had 8 wins, so you can see how much worse they were than the rest of the field. They didn't have any cap room this season to make any major changes. They picked up one player, Christian Espinoza, from Villarreal in La Liga, who's a young winger. He was just picked up on loan for the year, so they really couldn't do anything this offseason. They haven't changed anything. But Minnesota, I'm high on this year. I think they're going to be much improved. They made some big defensive changes, which was their weakness last year. They added 4 names: Opara, Alonso, Metnier, and ex-Arsenal goalkeeper Manon. And they all played last week. They all started and played all 90 minutes. And, they did a good job. And I think they're going to, learn each other a little bit more as each game goes on and really start to understand where each other is going to be on the field. So I only see them improving as we go on through the weeks. And I just don't see San Jose doing much this year, much improvement either way. So I like Minnesota catching the plus quarter of a goal for sure. It may even be worth throwing a few bucks in the money line on Minnesota. So I think that's the way to play this game with Minnesota here.
And Nick, also seeing what all the totals are 3, which we talked about, but no road teams are favored this week, huh? Is it that tough of travel spots, or you think that's just coincidence that the more talented teams are playing at home?
It's MLS in general. When you look at any week, you can go back to last year, check out lines, and as we go forward this year, the MLS is very home favorite situated. I mean, it's like you might see on a given week 2 to 3 teams max favored on the road, but when you're scoring 2, 3 goals, 4 goals a game, there's not a lot of room for error, and just having that energy from the home field makes such a huge difference. So usually what you'll do is you'll see a better team on the road kind of be set as like a pick'em price as opposed to maybe favored by a half of a goal. So there's just not a lot of it in the MLS, and there won't be, I don't think, as we go forward. So nothing unusual there, just something to kind of keep note of as we go forward.
And that leads us right into the next game with Seattle as a big home favorite, minus 1.25, hosting Colorado, total of 3. And for the novice bettors out there, minus 1.25. That's almost like a puck line in hockey or a run line in baseball. I mean, if Seattle wins 3-2, you lose your bet, right?
Yep, that's true. You're going to lose. And with soccer, you have that little nuance of the quarter of a goal. So you're going to lose half of your bet because 1 1/4 goals is actually half of your bet on -1 and half of your bet on -1.5. So you would push the -1 and then lose the -1.5 side of it. So it's a loss, but just a half a loss on as far as your units go.
Okay, that makes sense. It just seems like soccer is such a low scoring sport that seems like I don't know, man, just a tough hill to climb there, laying more than a goal in a soccer game.
It is, and honestly, I'm not really comfortable with laying that number, and I'm not comfortable on either side of this one. If the line moved to Seattle -1, I'd say you can comfortably take Seattle because at least you can push on this game if they do win just by one goal. But Seattle, they looked super impressive last week, but they were playing Cincinnati, who's a new expansion team this year. So it's hard to get a read on them from that. They were great last year. And they finished second in the West, and I think they're going to be right up there again this year. So don't get me wrong, they're a good team, but it's hard to get a lot of read from that last week's game. Colorado, I don't know if you happen to catch any highlights. I posted some on Twitter of a goal during that game. There was like 4 inches of snow on the ground. It was the coldest game in the MLS ever played. The numbers all suggested to take the over, which was set low at 2.5. But I'm like, how can you do that with that weather on the field? It ended up being a 3-3 shootout, so it was pretty neat to see. But again, I don't know how much the weather and the snow impacted the play, or players were slipping. It was just a weird game to watch. Colorado actually got a red card in the 27th minute of the game, so they were playing a man down the rest of the game, and they came back twice. They were trailing twice in that game, and came back to tie it. So. Fun game to watch, I can say that, but I didn't get a lot of read off of that game or really the Seattle game. So if it does move to Seattle -1, I would say that's the way to play it. I don't think it's going to, so I'm not going to really make a recommendation here on this one, but hopefully we'll learn something after we watch this from these two teams and be able to kind of capitalize on them going forward.
Got two major markets here. DC United at New York City FC, -0.75. That's New York laying at home, total of 3.
Yeah, so DC, they opened the year with a huge win over the reigning Cup champs, beating Atlanta 2-0, which, sounds like a surprise, but really wasn't. DC was really strong at home last year, especially the second half. They had so many home games because their stadium was being worked on in the beginning of the season. So not a huge surprise. It might be for the people that were, just know kind of Atlanta was the defending champs. But Atlanta, they didn't have their newly acquired Pity Martinez. He didn't play this week, and I'm not really sure what's going on there as far as why he didn't play. I couldn't find really any updates on anything from the team page. I think it sounds like he's going to come in and play for Atlanta this week, but we'll get into that later. So anyway, he didn't play for Atlanta, so DC looked good, but again, I don't know what to make of the fact that Atlanta wasn't at full strength there. But New York City, I have them going down this year. They were great last year, but they lost 2 of their best offensive players, and David Villa and Yangel Herrera. They played to a 2-2 draw, against Orlando last week, and Orlando was bad, and that they had a 2-0 lead at the half, and they gave up 2 goals to Orlando in the second half. Just kind of gives an indicator of what I'm expecting from this team. They might be able to put up some goals here and there, but I don't think they're going to be able to keep people from scoring. So I don't know if New York should be favored. I don't think they should be favored by 3/4 of a goal in this game, and I don't know if they should be favored by all, to be honest. So I like DC in this game, catching the 3/4 of a goal. I'm looking to kind of fade New York City early in the season until the markets adjust. I think, like I said, they're going to have a down year this year.
All right, underdog look on DC at New York. We got Philadelphia at Kansas City up next, Nick. Kansas City -0.5 at home, total at 2.75.
Yeah, so I live right outside of Philadelphia, so I'm a Union fan. But I think we're staring at 0-2 right here. Kansas City is good. Philly, they really disappointed last week. They lost 1-3 at home against Toronto. They are going through some tactical changes this year. They're changing from a possession-based formation to more of an attacking aggressive style formation. So there's going to be a learning curve, along the way there. And they also traded their best scorer, CJ Sapong, to Chicago. And their replacement didn't come in until the 68th minute. So I'm not sure whether he's going to be starting or coming on as a sub again this week. But Kansas City, we mentioned at the beginning of the pod here, they lost me a heartbreaker. I had them plus a half a goal at Los Angeles, and they lost 2-1 in the 5th minute of stoppage time. So that stunk. But I felt like that was the right side in this game, in that game, and I like them again in this game. They're very strong. They did a great job against LA of limiting their playmaker, Carlos Vela. But I think they just paid a little bit too much attention to him, and they kind of left themselves vulnerable on the other side. But Philly doesn't really have that name guy up front, so I don't think we're going to see that issue here. I think Kansas City's probably going to roll to a rather easy win here at their first home game. So KC on this one, Drew.
All right, we got 2 games left, Nick. Cincinnati at Atlanta. Atlanta, heavy favorites here. Another situation where it's more than a goal, minus 1.25 total. High total here, Nick. 3.25 in Atlanta.
Yeah, I think they're I think the markets are kind of looking at, again, Cincinnati played that first game of their expansion life last week, losing big to Seattle. And I think the markets are kind of looking at this as they don't have a good read on them, especially defensively. And Atlanta, they lost 0-2 against DC and at DC, and I think they're going to have a rebound here. I mean, they're the defending champs. They're returning home for their opening home game, and they should probably have a full sellout, 70,000 plus at that stadium, which is just one of the most exciting stadiums to play at for that home team. So I like Atlanta, even though minus 1.25 is more than you like to lay. I think they're actually going to come in here and blow Cincinnati out. I could see a 2-3 or 3-goal win here easily. Like I said, I don't know what to make of Cincy. It's going to be a while before we get a read on them. But for right now, I think Atlanta is the play here. Return to form and Cincy, who knows? But I don't think they're going to show up in this one.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic the odds makers are put in, because you'll notice they have Seattle heavy favorites by more than a goal, and you just mentioned they beat Cincinnati last week, right, Nick?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think a lot of people, if they don't look at the underlying statistics too much, or really looking at last year and what people did over the offseason, they just kind of know the names, and you're looking at, newly expanded side. It's tough. The odds makers obviously can't go too high, or you're going to have some sharp edges coming in on the other side. But it's a tough situation to try to put a price on a team they don't have a lot of data on, for sure.
Left here, Portland at Los Angeles. Los Angeles minus 0.75. Total of 3 here. Yeah,
so again, I'll say it again. Los Angeles dealt me a heartbreaker last week, beating KC 2-1 in stoppage time. But sometimes you get stuck on these, as I guess we're in this business, sometimes you kind of get stuck on those tough losses, and you kind of let that affect you week to week. But I'm going to try to move on here with an unbiased eye and look past that loss last week. But LAFC, they're going to be one of the top teams in the West again this year. Their supporting cast around Carlos Vela looked great in that first game. He draws most of the attention from the defenses, so they have to be able to step up, and they really did. Diego Rossi scored the first goal for them, and Adama Diomande scored as the winner, coming in as a 58th minute as a sub. So they did a good job of supporting Rossi in that first game. Portland, they couldn't beat Colorado after leading twice. That was the game that was in the snow. So, I don't know exactly how much that snow played into the factor of that game, but Portland is a better team than Colorado. They were in the MLS Cup final last year, and it was their defense that really, got them there. They rode that all the way to that MLS Cup. So the fact that they were ahead against Colorado twice in that game and couldn't hold on to the lead, especially with Colorado having only playing with 10 men after receiving a red card, was, alarming. Again, I don't know how much the snow impacted that on the defensive side for them, but it is definitely something I made note of as I was checking out the highlights from that game. So unfortunately, I really didn't get a read on Portland in that game, and I'm not really truly comfortable making a recommendation on this game. It's going to be a second primetime game for LAFC in back-to-back weeks, as they got the late game on Sunday again this week. So I'll sit back, we'll watch this one, try to learn for the future weeks, but I'm not going to make a recommendation here. But hopefully we'll be able to watch a good match.
He's Nick Borrman. Follow him on Twitter at Borman00. Also, check out his 2 free plays at Sportsmemo.com. He's involved in the Real Salt Lake game. Also, the Chelsea game going off tomorrow. So, Sportsmemo.com. Check out Nick's homepage. Also, the $99 special MLS for 1 month, discounted to just $99. Real easy to find there on the right side of Sportsmemo.com at Nick's homepage. Nick, thanks for the time. Obviously know your stuff in the MLS. Best of luck this weekend, man, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, Drew. Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll be back tomorrow talking the basketball betting boards.